Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Know Your Changemakers, wherein we're talking about people who are driving change as leaders in their respective organizations and also acting as inspiration for a lot of us who are actually trying to make our own changes in the field of HR. So, today, it's a delight for me to invite Priyanjali as our guest, and she's the Vice President, People Practices and Culture at AgroStar. It's a delight to have you with us today, Priyanjali. Thank you for joining us, and hope to have an interesting conversation around your journey. And will be obviously, as always, because we look at covering a lot of change makers in the true sense. A lot of people in this community are looking for aspirational leaders like you who can actually guide them through the journey itself. So it's a delight to have you with us today.
No, same here, Ravi. Thanks a lot for the invite. I think it's been great working with Darwinbox and equally looking forward to the conversation. I think reflection is a critical part of any learning cycle, right? So I'm
Right.
looking forward to reflecting on the past. I think I'll also gain some insights from the conversation, not just others.
Absolutely. So before we start, I wanted to pick your brains on the word change makers, right? I mean, when I say change makers, what comes to your mind?
I think what comes to mind is like I love this term of high agency. So when I look at change makers, I look at the attribute of somebody like that, somebody who's extremely optimistic, who has high agency, who decides to uh, I mean, one thing is to crib about a current situation. Second thing is to really take steps to make it better, right? And I think that is what comes to my mind when it comes to change makers. And I think change is the only constant. It's as cheesy as it sounds. We found it to be true in most aspects. So yeah, I think don't know if I'm one yet. We'll maybe talk about that a little bit. But I love that term because I personally think even in organizations you need maybe just 15, 20 of these people, but if you're lucky enough to have 20 change makers, it can totally revolutionize the culture as well as the outcome.
Absolutely, absolutely, completely, and echo that sentiment of having just a limited few of them who can actually charge the entire group together. So, speaking of change, it's been very interesting to see your journey as well, right? I mean, so you started off with big wigs in the IT space, so you had started a journey with Infosys and quite a good stint there. Then you moved to Honeywell. So,
Yeah.
from let's say established institutions to the startup ecosystem through Ola, and then to AgroStar, talk the community through about your journey and what was the thought process behind established brands to, let's say, the unexplored territory of startups. I mean, and I sense from your profile as well that you're someone who's super keen on working with startups. So what
Yeah.
brought about that change, if you can tell us that?
Maybe let me start a little bit behind, and talk about why HR to begin with. So, my father was in corporate actually. So he used to work for Philips, and he was an operations person. So he was started on the shop floor, retired as a factory manager, but he used to bring his work home. So all my bedtime stories used to be, like this is early 90s, late 80s, used to be about strikes, union trouble, and all of that, right? So what was exciting, I mean, to me was that while he was a functional person, he was an engineer, what seemed to impact the outcome or the success of the organization was not the quality of machines but the interpersonal relationships, right? So that was very interesting to me, and somehow from the beginning was very keen that I wanted to get into corporate India, and wanted to get into HR. So did my bachelor's also in business administration and then did my master's also in business administration. No big game plan, to be honest. I think picked out of all the companies which came on campus, but I remember my thought process even then being to join Infosys not because it was an established company, but because it was an entrepreneurial company, right? Like a lot of people now forget it, but Infosys was one of the first really big startups, so as to speak, in India, right? So I have always been very fascinated with this David and Goliath, story, and bunch of young people coming together. And honestly, I think that is why I chose to join Infosys. Was very inspired by Nandan, Narayan Murthy, and so many others who came together to change the narrative at that point of time of IT. Yeah, I think now that I look back, it was a totally different world. Even I look at it as chapter one, chapter two. Chapter one, and you hit the nail on the head with saying the word established. These established organizations, they were really world class when it comes to people practices. I believe I learned a lot, because they took a long view of people. I remember when I was in Honeywell, we used to spend days discussing succession planning, and this is like the senior most people in a room talking about
Mm.
people. How do you develop them? So it was very interesting to hear and actually see in action how seriously some of these organizations took talent. uh, but yeah, I do believe for somebody young who's starting out, startups are the place to be. So after 6 7 years there, I was sort of feeling that while the organizations are amazing, maybe not the right fit for me. uh, and that's when I moved to startups. And like you said, Ravi, I think I have found my home here, because again, as HR people, I really feel that in startups you don't get put in a box. You can contribute a lot to the overall business vision. um, not many things are established. Nobody is going to, just because you say the word succession planning, nobody is going to take it seriously. Not many people will think long term about talent also. But I do believe that you get a seat at the table, and then it's about what you make of it, right? So that's sort of been my reason to move from large organizations to startups. And I sometimes do wonder, but I don't think I would want to go back to these amazingly large organizations, however good they are. I have realized that I love the journey of small to big. So not that you always want to be small forever, but the journey of small to big is one which comes with a lot of learnings.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I think I'm actually tempted to ask you about the controversial question of work weeks and all, but we'll stay away from controversy and move on to something more meatier here. So I see AgroStar, right? And I think I really like the tagline that you've kind of been following, which is helping farmers win. So for our audience here, if you could tell us a bit more about AgroStar, what's the kind of work happening there, and
Sure.
it's really cutting edge in terms of agriculture, and I really want to understand, and our audience also to understand what's the good work happening there.
Sure. So I think what we are realizing, right, that as an average Indian, I feel sometimes you just hear about the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? You hear about
Mm,
this one farmer who got really rich exporting grapes, and
mm,
you unfortunately hear about the other extreme, wherein you hear of farmer suicides happening
yeah.
across India, even in Maharashtra. So you
Mm,
hear these extremes, but what is a reality is that year on year agriculture yields in India are falling down, right?
mm,
That is a documented, genuine problem across. And it was interesting that nobody was working on that specific problem. And
mm,
Shardul Satanshu, who are the founders, picked it up because their whole thesis was that there has been a lot of advancement in
mm.
the scientific study of agriculture, but it
Right.
remains very theoretical. So can we
Correct.
create that advisory into very bite-sized information which a farmer can
Mm,
understand, which he
right.
can use? Can we provide him or her high quality products at
Mm,
reasonable rates? And overall input cost can be lower, what a farmer is
mm,
using today. His
mm.
or her yield can be more because of
More.
advisory that is coming in, and
Right.
hence output will increase. And through our acquisition of INI, which is the largest
Mm,
exporter of bananas and pomegranates, hopefully with the output increasing, he
mm.
can choose to sell it globally, or he or she can choose to sell it in the Indian market. But
Right.
that's where AgroStar is coming in, to be honest, wherein we are saying that quality inputs with right advisory will help in improving people's output. And in our case, advisory is completely free. So
Mm,
any farmer across India can call our AgroStar advisory center. It is one of the
mm,
largest advisory centers in Asia. We
mm.
have close to 500 BSc agriculture graduates, who, by the way, we realized just hire BSc agriculture and they know anything everything, right? But that's exactly, again, it was extremely theoretical. So after they
Yeah.
join, they go through like a 2 month intensive process, and
Right.
that's when we start talking to farmers. So advisory is free, and a
Okay.
farmer can be assured of high quality inputs and the right advisory through AgroStar.
Fantastic. I mean, that's great work that you guys are doing, and kudos to AgroStar for actually delving into something which is so critical and inherent to India as a country, right? And that's phenomenal. So one thing which I want to, and you talked about your earlier journey as well, right? So I think I wanted to ask you a little bit about, let's say, the various sectors that you've worked in, right? And how has your role shaped your approach at AgroStar? I mean, historically, I mean, the years that you've spent in the other sectors, Has that in any way influenced how you approach things at AgroStar?
See, I think early on there is a because of Infosys and Honeywell, I
Mm,
believe one way that I mean, what got inculcated in me was a huge amount of respect for subject matter expertise, which maybe is
right.
not there in many startups. To be honest, you tend to think everything is a first principles problem, and anybody can do everything.
Yeah, yeah.
While I do agree to 80%, but I believe through Infosys and through Honeywell, and I was part of Honeywell Technology Solutions in the aerospace division. So my business counterparts that time used to be PhDs with 30 years of experience, right? So there is a healthy respect for subject matter expertise. I think that is what was inculcated from me very early on. And
Right.
then, yeah, I think Ola was a phenomenally different journey, wherein we realized that if you put a bunch of smart people together
Together.
and allow them to really dream very very big, then magic can happen, right? So that was
Right.
also a different culture shock of the highest order after working with Infosys Honeywell when I joined Ola, to realize that what, it's not just because of a designation or because you're coming from a team anybody is going to give you any sort of respect. I think you have to
Right.
earn anything and everything, and you
Correct.
have to look at different ways to solve problems. So I think that is what I learned from Ola. But I do feel that and AgroStar is again a very interesting thing, right? That we
Mm,
call ourselves a startup because we have, again, we don't put people into boxes. We are growing very rapidly. At the
mm.
same time, agriculture is an extremely subject matter expertise
Yeah.
driven industry, right? It is not
True.
like, I mean, it's even more so than mobility or food or e-commerce.
Right.
So I think recognizing which are the roles, which are the teams wherein you need subject matter expertise, you should not compromise on that. And how do you make people who are coming in with that subject matter expertise feel very comfortable in an environment wherein the average age is so low, the way of thinking is very very different. I think that
Right.
is how different industries have sort of helped me in the journey.
Fantastic. So I think so obviously one question that comes to mind is that when you look at retention also as a strategy, right? And I think a lot of people who will be joining AgroStar or let's say want to be associated, I'm assuming that will be a strong passion in them in some way. So, I wanted to understand from you in a sector as challenging as agriculture, wherein even today there's a lot of dependency on timely rainfall and a lot of such challenges, and you talked about suicides as well.
Yeah,
So, as an organization, you're actually trying to create a massive impact. So, I'm
sure,
assuming that a lot of folks that are joining you have that passion towards agriculture. I would like to think so. But let's say there are still challenges in terms of skill. You talked about SMEs in terms of not theoretical but practical knowledge as
correct.
well. So how do you look at those skill gaps and retention? Are they prominent issues for AgroStar in any way? And what strategies? And of course, I mean, you played an instrumental role in shaping the culture at AgroStar right from the beginning itself. So, what have been some of the successful strategies that you've used to address these skill gaps and maybe retention also?
Sure. So we actually have three kinds of talent, Ravi, in AgroStar. One is the talent that we have for our agri advisory centers, wherein we are catering to farmers directly online through our app or call center, and the product is delivered to their homes, right? And that talent cohort is one of our most important ones, and that is fresher BSc agriculture graduates, who come on board and we train them and things like that. There is a passion for agriculture. Most of them come from farmer backgrounds. So, their parents are farming and they come into Pune and Ahmedabad, where our second offices, and they come in. And there, I think the whole idea is, you're shaping them because this is their first corporate job. Managing emotions of people at that point of time, managing aspirations is extremely difficult. And there we focus a lot on technical training. I think we have the luxury and privilege that people are right in front of us, so honestly it does get a little bit easier. But we spend a lot of time on technical training, and we spend a lot of time on coaching. So our manager model is that you have your direct manager, but you will have a buddy, you will have a coach, because it many times gets very overwhelming for people just coming into the workforce to have targets. It's not easy at all,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that, and there I think we focus a lot on technical training, as well as we focus a lot on grooming. So your behavioral trainings and grooming in order to get on the leadership career path, because there I think that career path also we have created where you can have accelerated growth, right? You come in as an advisor, you can become a team coach, then you can become a team leader, then you can become an assistant manager and things and so on. The second cohort that we have is people on the field. So we also have about close to 10,000 retail stores across India now, where a farmer can go to a retail store and buy our product. So this is where we are hiring from the traditional agri industry, so as to speak, right? So there, I think the challenges are very different, because these are people who are good. They understand subject matter expertise. They may not be as good with tech as we want them to be. So because our way of functioning is very different from a typical agri industry. You have an app, you have different models, you have a lot more products, because a typical company would have seeds, would have a few verticals. We have more than 250 products at AgroStar. So you need to be able to assess what the farmer or the retailer needs, and have the subject matter expertise to give that person. So there, I think we are working a lot on technical skill set. We are working a lot on confidence. We are working a lot on pitching skills. We are working a lot of on those aspects. And yeah, then you have the third group, which is your typical startup corporate group, where people are coming in, and I do believe that they are so. Most of them don't come from a farming background, to be honest. The first two groups, most of them would be coming from the farming background. The third group is not necessarily from a farming background. I think they are driven, like you said, with a passion to make a difference. I feel that is the overriding thing. Then agriculture is one of the areas that they are looking to contribute to. But I think there, the driving factor is that I want to do more, I want to grow faster, I want to you know uh, something should get impacted because of my work. So that's where I believe our core thing of identifying talent, giving them big opportunities, having a very flat structure where there's no hierarchy. They can work with senior leaders, they can work with founders directly. I think that really helps and works. I think from a retention perspective, if I see across the three cohorts, two or three things that are really working for us. One is definitely an ownership and hierarchy less culture. People appreciate that. The first cohort for whom it's a first job may not appreciate it as much, because they don't have a reference point. But for most people where it's a second or third job, I think they really appreciate that. I think the culture is good. It's high ownership. You can take up big things, and I never thought about that. The fact that working with nice people was important, to be honest, in the first 10-12 years of my career. But now I realize that that is extremely important, right? The where you spend 10 hours or 9 hours of your day, you need to feel good while doing it. So one is the culture bit. I think the second bit is around opportunities. There is one great quotation that I love, which says that give young people opportunities, they will surprise you and create magic, right? So we have a program called Udan, wherein we encourage people to change roles every 2 to 3 years. So internal talent mobility is a very very big thing. So we do, and I mean, we have been lucky that we have at AgroStar, I think last I checked, about 120 plus people who have completed 5 years, right? So however motivated they are, I think beyond a point you need fresher and newer challenges to make a difference. So I think internal talent mobility is a big thing. And the third one is also around ESOPs, Ravi. Like we have, I believe, one of the most widely distributed ESOP programs in any startup. We have ESOPs not just for the leadership team, but our entire sales team on the ground has ESOPs. Because we, in every call we are telling them, think like the owner of the company, think like a founder. You have to back it up. You can't just use language, right? So I think that way, it's about psychology also, right? You talk to them about ownership, they can see it. We have a very transparent tool wherein they can see the growth of their ESOPs. So long term rewards around ESOPs is, I think, our third strategy when it comes to retention.
Fantastic. And I think right timing to talk about ESOPs as well when you're actually seeing some of these translate into great results with Swiggy and the likes, right? So
True.
a lot of people are actually deriving great satisfaction from those success stories because it actually bodes well for corporate India as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So great to hear this, Priyanjali, and all the three initiatives. I think like are top notch, and of course, it's wonderful to actually have a mix of people which are working together, and it kind of brings in a very cohesive environment overall as well. One thing which I want to talk to you about was workforce management itself, right? And you've been in the industry now long enough. It kind of would have seen a lot of significant changes in the way workforce management has evolved over the years, right? So I just want to understand from you what have been some of those major changes that you have observed? in terms of what it was, let's say 10, 15 years back to what it is today? And has, let's say, tools or platforms played a role in that, what do you say, evolution journey itself?
Yeah. I do believe it's gotten a lot more personalized, Ravi.
Mm,
We can't just afford to look at. So that is an interesting thing, right? Like my title, and it was changed before I came in, so I can take no credit for that. But this whole human resources bit moving to people practices.
right.
So I think we moved beyond just looking at people as numbers and saying these many people need to be there to deliver this revenue or this outcome. So I do
Mm,
feel it has gotten a lot more personalized.
mm,
I do feel it has gotten a lot more gamified. So
right.
I think that is a personal belief of mine also around making work fun. But I do believe you need to enjoy the process. You can't be
True.
hitting the process, but then just be looking forward to that one increment number or one promotion at the end of the year, which is supposed to make all of this worthwhile, right? So
Right.
I do see personalization being very important, and I do see gamification being very important around workforce management.
Mm,
And also I do see a lot of focus around productivity, and
mm,
there is where data always helps, right? Because if you can tell the employee that, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing, this is where you are going off, that can really start off a coaching conversation. And I feel, I mean, tools are never enough. I do think HRMS, I mean, there's so much more to be done from that perspective, and it's not very easy also. But
mm,
yeah, I think we have seen that happen. So personalization through many things that we have done with Darwin also, because
right.
this was an interesting thing. We were always a agri advisory kind of a organization where all our employees were in two locations, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we shifted to a place wherein now I have people in tier 2, tier 3 cities where the typical things don't work, right? So
Yeah.
how do I still stay connected to them? That is really impacted. And I think, yeah, gamification is also extremely important.
Fantastic. I think the journey has been like fantastic, and just want to also look at your thoughts on something which has been a talk of the town for the last 5 years. But if I talk about it, majority of the action or the executables have probably come in the last 6 months to 1 year, which is artificial intelligence, Gen AI,
Okay,
and
okay.
just want to get your sense, right? So, I mean, there is obviously cautioned optimism there, right, in terms of the power and the potential it has. But at the same time, there's also that fear in a lot of conversations that I've had. So, I just want to understand, where do you stand vis-a-vis artificial intelligence? Because what we've seen in the last 6 months is something which was promised for almost a decade, but it's
Yeah,
finally started happening.
yeah.
So, what is your thought from future of work standpoint and artificial intelligence as well?
I'm in the optimist bucket, to be honest. I feel we are yet to see how it can really impact life at large. To be honest, we are using, most of us, I would say, it's more talked about than used right now. But I'm extremely optimistic because again, I feel you look at the core DNA, right? Everybody wants to do better work. I would like to believe everybody wants to do better work, and everybody has high learnability. Most people have high learnability, right? So there are so many transactional, operational aspects, and time is never enough. I think as we are scaling, there is more and more need for teams to become leaner, teams to become more productive. In the absence of this, it is going to lead to burnout, right? Because organizations are going to mandate lean teams whether you have AI or you don't have AI, right? So you have no option but to look at technology as a huge enabler to in fact reduce burnout, I would say, right now. So we are experimenting with multiple things at an organization level and more so at a personal level, because there are just so many tools available to make things more productive. I do think life is going to change. I don't like, I mean, we have an agri advisory center, right? There are so many manual things also that can get, and but can it replace the real advisory part of it, where there are so many permutation combinations when you're talking to a farmer? It's not a very simple if this then X. There are five or six things which need to come in. I don't believe it can. It will take a long time, especially when you look at local languages and things like that. But I'm very optimistic that it can reduce burnout. It can allow everybody to do better quality work, which will impact people happiness, and it will make organizations fundamentally better, is what I do.
I think a lot of us echo your sentiment as well. That, I mean, it has to be looked at from that perspective only, because the world is changing, and unless you change with it, I mean, you'll kind of fall back as well. One angle that I want to talk about is that you've had a stellar career, right? And I'm sure that there would have been like at least 2 to 3 moments of real success or things where you feel really proud of having achieved. So, are there like one or two that you would like to share with the changemakers community? Things that you're really proud of in your HR career that you've achieved.
Um, Honestly, I mean, when I think that way I'm quite a pessimist. I think the idea is to
Okay,
always keep doing more. So I get very excited about small things.
right,
Uh, I do believe, and you talked about culture a little bit earlier. I do believe AgroStar had a very unique culture. Even when I joined Ravi, I can't take
mm,
credit for that. I think I believe we have very different founders, and for the first time, I had met a lot of founders who were very excited about the mission, who are very excited about scale, very excited about growth, wanting to make a difference. For the
right,
first time, I believe when I met Shardul Sitanshu, I met founders who, as excited as they were about all of these things, they were equally excited that can we create a workplace where people love to come to work, right?
fantastic.
And it was I think it's been the biggest challenge, that how can we adapt that thought process at 300 people, wherein everybody was working in a small room, and you could build a community, to now when we are about 1,500 people spread across locations. So
Mm,
that journey has been very exciting for me. I take a lot of pride in that while there are always opportunities to get better, I don't think we are perfect, but that we have managed to retain that culture, we managed to make it better in certain aspects.
mm,
That is one overarching thing that I'm really proud about. And yeah, I
fantastic,
think I'm really proud that I have uh, done different roles. So actually in AgroStar, I got an opportunity to a business role also in between. I
fantastic.
when we started our offline business, I did the sales role for the first 18 months almost, along with HR. So I think that again
Fantastic.
is a very, very proud feeling for me, because, and I highly recommend any HR person to do a business role, because I think understanding business is the most important thing, especially when you look at startups, because that's when you can have a real conversation and not a very theoretical conversation with your business leader. Because organization outcomes do come first, right? I think we would be
Mm,
kidding ourselves if we think it is the other way around. So yeah, so
right.
that was also very exciting. It was like moments of panic throughout, because sales is a business you need to deliver every
Yeah, yeah,
day,
yeah.
and we are such a
Absolutely.
data driven thing. Every day there are dashboards. But yeah, that's something that I take great pride in.
I think there are good learnings that have emerged through this discussion already, but couple of critical ones that you mentioned about subject matter experts and the importance of them, and then second one is like having at least a significantly good exposure to business because that's when HR tends to understand it better. So those are like really great learnings. I also want to spend, let's say, a little bit of time on also talking about through the journey. There could have also been moments where not necessarily setbacks or failures, but avenues of learning that emerged for you, right, over the years. And again, so the reason I'm asking this, and I generally ask this to all the leaders who come on this channel, because that's again a vicarious learning opportunity for the members of the community. So,
Yeah.
any learnings that emerged for you over the years, which probably can be helpful for the changemakers community as well.
Honestly, there have been failures. I don't want to sugarcoat it. There have been failures as an organization, also as teams, as me as an individual. I think there have been big failures, and that itself was such a mental adjustment thing for me, Ravi, because as kids, right, you are taught to win. So if you, I mean, even me, growing up, expectation from parents was that you need to be in the top 5 of your class. I was the head girl in my school. I was part of placement committee in my college, and then you come into an environment wherein you are failing every day. You may still be, and especially in startups, you have this thing, right, that you grew 200% compared to last year, but you still achieved only 80% of your target, right? And somebody else may look at it like amazing, you grew 200%, but most people who have had this conditioning, it's like, oh my god, I have missed it, and I've never been 80% of anything ever in life, right? So what do I do? So honestly, that has been a biggest mental adjustment it's very easy. All your self-help books will say that if you're not failing enough, you're not I mean, you're not trying hard, or your goals are not audacious enough, but it's extremely difficult to do. So I have spent a lot of time through coaching with other people, as well as trying to, do a coaching certification myself to identify patterns in myself and in others, to say, why do you have such a high bar? And having a high bar is good, but if it's going to make you miserable, then it's not good, right? So if it's going to push you to do better, then I think that's the way to go. So I mean, classic case, even the sales role that I was talking to you about, right? We have always been a direct to farmer business, and this was the first time we were giving experience of catering to our customers, to a retailer. We call them Sathi partners. And we went through multiple models, right? So the fifth model which actually clicked was, sorry, the final model which actually clicked was the fifth model, right? And there were people in my team, obviously, who thought of this and who executed it and stuff like that. But every model, when we are pivoting, there's so much ambiguity, there's so much chaos. Nobody likes to lose. People are feeling, but relentless optimism is the only way, to go past that. So I think those would be some of the failures that I can think of. I am lucky in that sense, to be honest. I have a very bad memory, so it seems really bad at that moment, but then later I just forget about it. But yeah, I think cracking anything successful is going to have multiple failures, and we've had more than a share of that, even in HR.
Yeah, absolutely. I think two things, right? I think one critical thing that emerges is that probably one quality or trait that separates startups from the others is the relentlessness, right?
Yes.
Because you're day in and day out, you're fighting, and day in and day out, you're surviving, you're winning and coming out. And there are days where you're winning by an inch,
Yeah.
by less than a centimeter, but you're still surviving for the next day. And that's a phenomenal, what do you say, zeal to kind of succeed that's there. But one also thing that emerges is maybe we as kids culturally, I mean, we were never equipped to fail actually. I mean, that's again something which is an important characteristic trait that needs to be taught. And I guess schools are listening into it, but maybe a little bit too much because they're now completely taking away competition and doing away with
That's
it
true.
completely.
That's true.
So that's again not the complete picture, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah.
But I mean, there's something for the education system also to pick up from here. But
True.
great thoughts there, Priyanjali. I think very, very essential that the relentlessness needs to continue. But at the same time, a Gajni kind of a mindset where you tend to forget your failures at times also helps. So coming to our interesting angle, right? I think we've had a great journey, right? I mean, we've had like 5 years with AgroStar and Darwinbox working together, partnering on multiple initiatives. So, wanted to understand from you. What have been some of the highlights for you through this journey between Darwinbox and AgroStar? Anything that you would like to share?
Sure. No, I think it it has helped us as a tool to get people together. To be honest, and again, the only way to convince stakeholders is to solve a use case, right? Like I have heard many times the same thing, that this can be just maintained on Google Sheets. If it is like a database, why do you need an HRMS for it? So two three things I think have really stood out for us. One is the R&R module and vibe. I think both of these things put together connected again with our culture very strongly, because we have a strong culture of appreciation. We have a strong culture of camaraderie. We have a strong culture of cross-functional. Most initiatives have a lot of cross-functional, collaboration involved, right? And so again, we were very lucky on, and this was done by somebody else in the team, that we had a very well established culture principles. We actually went through a redesign of that also. But earlier, so culturally, again, it was always there that we had these thank you cards, or we had these cards that you could just write and give to somebody, saying that, hey Ravi, today you collaborated as one, so thank you so much. And they'll be clapping on the floor, and there's a great positive vibe and things like that, right? And we've been doing this for the longest time. We do it very periodically. Plus, we used to have this annual event called Spreading Joy, wherein for a week we would say that, what, just take a time and say thank you to somebody. You may not have done it all the time. When we realized that, I mean, and it worked beautifully when we were a 300 people organization sitting in the same office. Then we expanded, and we were like, how do we now still retain the same? And honestly, we saw a dip. Again, talking about some of the gaps, right? We saw a dip. We were hiring so much. We deprioritized talking about culture, talking about stories, because again, it's not just about a deck with the standard words, right? You read any company, most of the culture principles are going to be same. What is going to be important is the stories that you talk about, the stories of failure, the stories of triumphs, the stories of people doing it. So we were also missing that, and it was just too inconvenient to do it for a remote audience. So our entire HR initiatives were so much stronger for the physical in office audience, and very very different and subpar, I would say honestly, for our audience which was remote, right? And that's when I think we talked to Darwin and we figured out that there is an R&R module, and we launched it through that. And that was the hooking point, to be honest, for us to also drive the app penetration, because we realized that, again, very different people in our field, they love apps, everything is on the mobile. Somebody in corporate doesn't want another app on their phone. So they prefer the web version. So that's also been learning. Like, I was one of those people who was maniacally driving 100% Darwin downloads on the app, but my corporate team even said, I don't want the app, I don't want to be connected on the phone, I want to be switched off once I leave. uh, but yeah, so we did an event called Spreading Joy, wherein you had these cards that you could share with people, and it went on Vibe, so everybody could see the cards, everybody could comment, react. And we did for about a week, and there was such an amazing response, Ravi. I think I mean, I think there were about close to 9,000 cards shared, um, which would never have happened if it was office, right? But you could do that, you could share it with multiple people together, because earlier you were recognizing a team, you could just throw one physical card and handed it to the leader, the one employee in the team who really made a difference. Maybe he or she didn't have anything on their desk. So this, I think, Spreading Joy is one amazing thing that has really worked out for us, and we keep seeing it happen. And I think the leadership team also commenting on it, so everybody knows that somebody is watching it. I'm getting recognized. To be very candid, we have purposely kept it totally non-monetary till now. I know a lot of organizations add a monetary angle to it. We have not done it because I somewhere want to still retain it for the pure thing of appreciation and recognizing somebody without any ulterior motive in mind. And I think it's been phenomenal. So that's one thing that's really worked. The other thing, because it's again not just about appreciation, right? That is also important, because it tells an employee what more do they need to do. At the same time, it's also about constructive feedback. So I think the entire performance management module, and especially 360-degree feedback, is something that we have really leveraged very very strongly. We have connected the 360 degree. Again, earlier used to be a very generic, what has Ravi done well, what could Ravi do better, and how would you rate Ravi overall. We have connected it to our culture principles, we have codified it in actionable instances. Darwinbox has again given us the flexibility that there are 5 cohorts, these are the culture principles this team needs to display, this is what this team needs to display. Across levels there are different competencies linked to culture principles. So 360-degree feedback, I think, and we take it really seriously from a development perspective when we are doing our annual reviews, when we are talking about who gets promoted to the next level. So that has also, I believe, really helped people. And the data elements of Darwin, wherein again we've sort of gamified it, because we realize that competition is important. People are excited about competition. So one is, it's about feedback that I get. Second is, where do I stand amongst the peer group? You obviously, it is confidential, so you will not know other people's scores, but you will know that even if you have got a 4 out of 5, there are leaders who have got, or there are employees who got a 4.5 also, right? So displaying that is possible. So some of these things, I think, would be very difficult to continue doing in a very old format, but Darwin has sort of enabled us to do that. I believe there's a lot more.
Right. There's a lot of work that we're doing, as we talked about AI as well, and there's a lot of new things that are also coming up. And we'll probably come and explore and discuss some of those with you as well over the next few months also. But I think broadly, we move to the last segment of this interview. Priyanjali, it's been a great interaction with you so far. Now I'm going to put you in a bit of a spot because I'm going to ask you some rapid fire,
Sure,
and you're going to answer with whatever first comes to your mind, right? So,
sure, sure.
what's the best HR advice you've received till date?
Understand business and be extremely curious, I think.
Fantastic. Okay. If you could switch jobs with someone for a day, who would that be?
Oh, that's very exciting. I have done that anyways by switching job with a sales head.
Yes,
But yeah, maybe the CEO. I think that's the way to go now.
absolutely. You have a seat at the table. Next thing is the CEO's job only. Fantastic. Okay, one myth about HR that you would love to debunk.
Um,
Something that's a myth that you feel is not correct, not rightly attributed.
other than the Rangoli competition thing. No, I think people think HR is very unidimensional. Most organizations think it's only pro employee, and most employees think it's only pro organization. I believe it's one of the most complex roles any person can play. So yeah, I think that the myth that it's very unidimensional, I would love to debunk that.
Right. Okay. Which book or podcast has had the biggest impact on your journey? I mean, at least some to a memorable journey that you have. I mean, over the last 5 years, maybe, for example. Any
Yeah.
book or podcast that's had an impact?
Actually, I love this podcast called Masters of Scale.
Okay.
It's by Reid Hoffman. I highly recommend it. There is one specific one about where the Airbnb founder talks about how they created this whole customer obsession, and he talks about this thing called 7 star experiences, that today customers don't want 5 star, they actually want
It's
7 star, and it's actually a value for us, and we have taken the 7 star experience very seriously in our HR journey. So Masters of Scale is something I highly recommend. From a books perspective, I have really loved Trillion Dollar Coach. Again, talks about coaching, and that's again evolution as an HR person. I think from being directly trying to solve problems to
right.
understanding most problems are people problems and how do you coach people. I love Radical Candor also as a book. And yeah, on a personal level, I love Naval, who's the founder of Angel List. So his
Right.
almanac is again a go-to read for me. I open it whenever I want,
True.
which is like weekly.
Yeah, that's many of us now adding to that list. So
Yeah,
Naval Ravikant is an inspiration.
true.
Okay, one word. How would your team describe you?
I think energetic, driven, too much energy for them most of the time.
Fantastic. Okay, now we'll final off. Ask one simple one. What would be your one piece of advice to anyone starting in HR today?
um, I think I covered a little bit of it. Genuinely, I do feel you should be extremely curious and
Mm,
ask. I think the right places encourage a lot of questions. So be extremely curious, ask a lot of questions,
mm,
uh, be willing to put in a lot of hard work. I do feel that that is extremely important if you want to go ahead and if you want to make an impact. Again, it's not about
true.
competition with respect to anybody else. So I
Right.
think be extremely curious, understand business, be a amplifier. I feel there are enough people who spread negativity. As an HR person, you have a biggest opportunity to be a positive amplifier. So whenever you are
Right.
seeing good things happening, appreciate them, recognize them in front of other people, and that is the way good culture or good behavior spreads across the organization. So I think be a positive amplifier would be one more.
Fantastic.
And
So I think it
read.
was
Nobody reads nowadays.
read.
I have a,
Absolutely.
and you know what? Like I keep telling this to my team. You don't need to read books. I understand it's moved. So you
True.
follow the right people on Twitter. You follow the right people on Instagram. Also, that's okay.
Yeah,
Audio books, podcasts, read. But I think life is too short to learn only from your own experiences. You need to learn from experiences of everybody around, and you never know when an idea strikes you.
absolutely. I think in this era of let's say limited mind space and people are moving to instant gratification, reading has kind of taken a back seat. So I'm also hoping that people watch this interview in full and I just don't look at the snippets being captured because there are a lot of pearls that we have discussed today and that I think will be very useful for the audience as well. So Priyanjali, it was an absolute delight and pleasure to have you with us. It didn't feel like a interview; it felt like more like a conversation with someone who's actually achieved great things over the years and a lot of learnings emerged from the conversation for me personally, and of course, I'm hoping for the community as well. So it was a delight to have you with us, Priyanjali. Any parting thoughts for the community? Obviously, we'll keep having you back in further iterations as well, but for this episode,
No, I just feel HR is one of the strongest functions for any organization. I really believe that because uh, you have to take a lot of decisions from your head but execute them from the heart, right? And that's where an HR comes in, and you have to be able to balance both of these things. So please understand your strength. You I mean, I really do believe that it's one team which can have the most amount of impact in any organization.
right.
So understand that, to do whatever is needed for you to project that and to get that kind of space in business conversations, because your inputs really do matter. And yeah, take care of yourself. I also do believe that, who's the HR for HR is a very it's a very important thing, right? So create a community for yourself, because in the organization you have to play a different role, but you need people around you to to motivate and to cheer you up also. So invest in building that community early on. But yeah,
Right.
I'm super optimistic
And
about
join change makers.
yes, and join change makers. That's true.
True. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Priyanjali, for your time. It was a pleasure having you on this episode. And I mean, for more content, obviously, you can join the Changemakers community, and we will always bring inspirational leadership to you.